We're about an hour out from hearing President Biden's speech on the battle for, quote, the soul of the nation. He's expected to continue ramping up his rhetoric towards MAGA conservatives, casting them as the ones driving division in America, less than a week after calling the Make America Great Again movement semi-fascism. According to excerpts of this prepared remarks that we're expected to hear tonight, he'll double down on that language, saying, quote, MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards to an America where there is no right to choose, no right to privacy, no right to contraception, no right to marry who you love. The president will deliver those remarks at Independence Hall in Philadelphia, which, ironically, is where he promised Americans days after being elected in 2020 that he'd put a stop to political division in a unifier-in-chief role. Have a listen.
Over 90 million people have already voted. Already voted. They've had enough. They've had enough. There's too much on the line to sit it out. We only have 2 more days. 2 more days we can put an end to this presidency that has, from the very beginning, sought to divide us, to tear us apart.
So on the defensive end of this speech is House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy, the Republican from Bakersfield, California. He just delivered a prebuttal to tonight's speech from Biden's hometown of Scranton, Pennsylvania. NewsNation's Kelly Meyer is following that part of the story from here in Washington. Kelly?
Hey, Vic. Well, that's right. House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy hitting Biden where it hurts, right in his old backyard of Scranton, Pennsylvania, just days after Biden was down the road in Wilkes-Barre. Now, McCarthy is hitting Biden on the title of his address tonight, the soul of the nation, saying that he's launching an assault on the soul of the nation, hitting him for calling out MAGA Republicans and for his remarks on the MAGA philosophy, calling that, like, quote, semi-fascism. Now, today, McCarthy calling on Biden to apologize to the voters that Biden singled out. Take a listen.
When the president speaks tonight at Independence Hall, the first lines out of his mouth should be to apologize for slandering tens of millions of Americans as fascists. What Joe Biden doesn't understand is that the soul of America is in the tens of millions of hardworking people, of loving families, of law-abiding citizens whom he vilified for simply wanting a stronger, safer, and more prosperous country.
And, Vic, this wasn't just McCarthy or Republicans' chance to get ahead of Biden's address tonight and hit back at him before he even can speak to Americans. It was also McCarthy's chance to make a pitch to voters to vote for Republicans ahead of the midterms as they fight to win back control of the House and the Senate. But it's also important to note that McCarthy could be vying for one of those top spots as House Speaker if they do take control of the House this fall. Vic?
Okay, Kelly, thanks a lot. I know you're from that area of Pennsylvania, a key swing district come this November. Okay, we're just weeks out from the midterms. The rhetoric from both parties, not just Democrats, but both parties, has soared. At the White House yesterday, Biden spokesperson Karine Jean-Pierre called MAGA supporters, quote, dangerous and, quote, a threat to our democracy. Take a listen one more time.
The president thinks that there is an extremist threat to our democracy. The way that he sees is the MAGA Republicans are the most energized part of the Republican Party. This is an extreme threat to our democracy, to our freedom, to our rights. They are pursuing an agenda that takes away people's rights.
Okay, so today, after seeming to call all MAGA Republicans and by extension Trump voters anti-democratic, she faced a firestorm of criticism for singling out a large portion of Americans, and today she backtracked.
We understand we hit a nerve. We get that. We understand that they're trying to hide. And we understand that ultra-MAGA office holders want to play games here and dodge accountability for their extreme proposals and actions, but they're just telling on themselves. Look, the president has always squarely targeted his criticism on elected leaders. This is about what they're doing in Congress.
Okay, so it wasn't the 70-plus million people who voted for President Trump last time around. It was the elected leaders. That's the clarification that she made today. So joining me now to discuss all of this is Susan Crabtree, White House and national correspondent, at RealClear Politics and an old friend of mine from the halls of Congress, and Lachlan Markey, Axios political reporter. Okay, to both of you, I'm going to start with you, Susan. This speech tonight, does it signal a complete platform change for President Biden as the great uniter as he started out a year and a half ago? Poll numbers now are the highest they've been in a year, so they seem to correspond with this more vitriolic, more strident tone that he's taking towards Republicans.
Well, I think it's a really dangerous road to walk for the president. We all have known, are seeing that it's just very close to the election, just a few months away. And we're seeing the politicization of the FBI, charges against maybe that the FBI is politicized. We just had one of their top agents resign the other day, and amid a fury clouds that he was holding back on the Hunter Biden investigation. So, yes, I think it's kind of a dangerous road. Why aren't we talking about both sides on the extremists? Why aren't we talking about Antifa that raised Cain and really created havoc for over a year and is still causing mayhem in Portland? There were definitely members of Congress who have done really divisive things on the Democratic side recently. We had Linda Sanchez just throw the bird at the Republicans at a baseball game that used to be, as you remember, a rare bipartisan comedy. So I just think he's risking alienating the middle ground. And those people who voted for Trump, there was nearly half the nation voted for Trump.
Yeah.
So are we talking about them too? And her efforts, the press secretary's efforts to differentiate really didn't sell with me.
Yeah, Susan, the Sanchez thing, flipping the bird to Republicans, and some of the other things you've been talking about, Antifa in Portland and what's going on in Portland and Seattle, those are issues that Republicans have been hitting on. But really what they want to talk about, as far as I can see, is the economy, because that's what voters care about, crime, because that's what voters care about. And today we have President Trump on a podcast saying that once he gets back into office, he's going to pardon everybody at January 6th, therefore putting President Trump back in the headlines and playing into the hands of Democrats. It would seem maybe that's conventional Washington thinking. Lachlan, what's your take?
Yeah, I think that's why you saw Leader McCarthy really focusing on the issues that Republicans across the board want to have front and center. He talked about education policy, he talked about crime and public safety, and he talked about inflation, obviously, and the state of the economy. I think most Republicans would be perfectly happy to move on from Donald Trump. The rhetoric, I think, from the White House and the Biden administration makes that more difficult to do and puts them in a position where they feel they have to sort of defend the president. And I think there's a similar tenor coming from the White House. The remarks that they released, they pre-released ahead of the speech, you saw the president, sort of focusing on abortion policy. And to me, that suggested that he's going to try to wrap this democracy theme into a broader Biden administration and Democratic agenda. And, because I don't know if these process arguments are really going to win that many voters over.
Yeah. Susan, nothing less than the Wall Street Journal, not exactly a liberal rag, had a poll out today that said if President Biden were head-to-head with President Trump in the presidential election, and I realize that we're 2 years away, President Biden would win by 6 points. So what is it about the strategy of Republicans? How can they move forward now with President Trump grabbing the headlines and sort of taking the oxygen away from some of the issues that they hope to press Democrats on coming up?
Well, I think that's what Democrats really want, is for Trump to be front and center. And I think that's one of the reasons why Biden is giving this speech tonight. He wants to, even though he might not mention him by name, he's talking about ultra MAGA Republicans, but he's very confused about who they are. One day they're Paul Gosar, rank and file, really kind of a backbencher. Next day they're the Republican leaders. So I think that's sort of buying into the Democratic argument.
Yeah.
Have had, certainly, I think most of the Republicans are ready to move on. We've seen many, many polls about that. Ron DeSantis, for instance, is much closer in a head-to-head matchup with Joe Biden than Trump is. And so I think that this is an effort by Democrats, as we've seen it all summer long, to bring up Trump as much as possible.
Right, and you're looking at Independence Hall there in Philadelphia, where the president is going to deliver his remarks in less than an hour there. Lachlan, I always use this analogy. For Harry Potter fans, you put on the sorting hat. You're either Slytherin or you're Gryffindor. You're either good or you're bad. Or you're bad or you're good. Now we have evidence, polling evidence that say in the past 6 years, both major parties have come to consider their opponents dishonest, immoral, closed-minded. What does that say about today's political climate over the course of the last several years and the ability of President Biden or President Trump or President Obama, for that matter, to really unite Americans, which clearly they've been unable to do?
Yeah, over the past month, there's been sort of a string of, on the policy front, big wins for the president and for congressional Democrats. And you sort of saw a bump in poll numbers that accompanied that. That sort of started to slide over the last few days. And I think, a big mistake that the president made was sort of getting back down into the muck of these sort of very rancorous, partisan, almost culture war fights when he was really riding high on what were a string of policy accomplishments. And I think that shows there can be some middle ground when you really focus on the, not to use a cliche, but the business of the people. And it looks like you're actually getting something done rather than, engaging in those sorts of petty squabbles. I think it's self-defeating.
Yeah, and I think Democrats in the White House look at it as a 1-2 punch. They are trying to capitalize on the legislative victories. There have been a few. I think clearly the gas prices are down. And also attack Republicans in sort of the conventional red meat way leading up to an election. Okay, Susan Crabtree and Lachlan Markey, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks, Mike.
And you can, all right.
Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.